Welcome to the DIY Writer Show with the mild-mannered, slightly heroic host, Jeff Bacon.
This is Jeff from the DIY Writer Podcast, and today I have a very special guest, and I'm sure this is going to be an interesting conversation. If you've never heard of her, you should have. Her name is V.S. Holmes. We're going to refer to her as V, just like a particular movie that we might even talk about. Who knows? But V, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Is it warm, cold, or?
It is cold. I mean, it's not as cold as I'm used to because we just moved out to the Midwest. I'm from the New England area, and but it's a little chilly. We've had some snow, had some rain.
Moved out to the Midwest.
Yep.
Do you mind me asking where, or is that
Northeast Ohio? Sort of Ohio. Between Cleveland and Pittsburgh.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Cool. Wisconsin right here.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got family out in Wisconsin too, so.
Oh, cool. Cool. We won't ask you where they're at because,
Good, because I can't remember the town.
It's somewhere between Illinois and the Great Lake and Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just
somewhere
see
in
them
there.
when they come back east, so.
Cool. Oh, man. So you have a new book coming out May 8th.
Yes.
Let me hear all about it.
So the new book is Heretics, and it's the fourth book in my Star's Edge NEL Bentley series, which is basically lesbian archaeologists in space with lots of foul language and fouler tempers. And this particular installment, we actually return to Earth, and it's a little different. It's a little different from when Nell last saw it. Some improvements have been made, and some very not great things have been happening. I did actually work in the pandemic a little bit.
Really?
Yeah. The timing worked out. I'm like, do I want to bring it up? Do I want to just pretend like it didn't happen? Like we all wish we could.
So how far in the future is this?
So just like a couple years.
Okay. Is COVID still a problem?
No,
okay.
But it was the solution to the COVID problem started a whole other series of problems. Yeah.
Don't go there. Okay, we definitely have to publish this after people have their vaccinations, and then tell them what's going to happen. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there is a vaccine in the book, but
oh no, just kidding.
Yeah, I thought a little reference would be fun. I've sort of worked in some other smaller references that like don't really impact the main storyline. Because the main arc, was cemented well before COVID happened. So I just, tweaked a few things here and there, kind of like little Easter eggs for the people who don't want pure escapism.
So, what she comes back to Earth, and you want to fill us in a little bit more on what happens, or I mean, is this
sure? So. This is the third book that I've got here, Strangers.
Yep.
And in this one of her sites, which is on a different planet, she's a skeptic. She hates sci-fi stuff. She's not keen on any of this, but it's basically the longest distance booty call that she's ever gone on. There's a really cute girl, so she decides to follow her into space, and ends up running this site, which is really cool, but also very far out of her element. And there's a sound that is triggering people's death in some way, whether it's killing them or causing them to, walk into poisonous atmosphere without their helmets and suits on.
Okay.
That's sort of what's happening. And no huge spoilers, but it looks like Earth might be next. And so book 4, Heretics, deals with, is Earth next? And what even is this sound? And how is it doing these things to these people? And who caused it? And do we trust anyone at all on this planet? So.
Yeah, if I had my guess as to who's behind it, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the Hare Krishnas. Sorry about that.
we have some of them in our family. So that's fine.
Well, yeah.
I get it.
That ought to be fun.
Mhm.
The hell was this guy saying? Actually, I don't think there's a kinder, gentler, place out or people out there. Maybe I don't know, but
There are certainly worse people, worse
there are a lot of
blanket statement.
missed a collection plate in one of my churches I attend, and boy, you'll see them come out. But you don't understand. God needs money. What? Wait,
Why?
he needs a U.S. dollar, right? Yeah, not gold. Yeah, okay, yeah, whatever.
I got a nickel in my wallet.
Yeah,
You can have that.
yeah. We'll just take all your money, and then God will give it back to you. Really? Okay. Yeah.
It'll trickle down, if you will.
It's trickle down economics. There you go. Beautiful. So how many books do you have out? I didn't actually count, but you've got the 4.
I've got, so Heretics will be my 8th full-length book.
8th full length.
I have several short stories drifting around in various anthologies.
Sure.
One of which is Disciples, which is a kind of prequel to the first book in the NEL Bentley series, which is Travelers. And Disciples kind of takes some of the events in Travelers, and they're from the love interest point of view, because the whole series is written like very close third person with Nell. And so Disciples goes and looks at things from Lynn's perspective, and she is not from Earth, and so that was sort of fun for me, just as an exercise to like, okay, like who are these people about? Like I get that my protagonist thinks her butt's cute, but beyond that, what's going on here? So I got to explore that from my own side of things.
Very cool. So how do you describe a cute butt in a book?
I mean,
You just say, "Oh man, that's a cute butt."
There's a
Hey,
lot of
nice
words.
ass or what? I mean,
there's a bit of nice ass. There's a lot of space metaphors. I like my colorful and lyrical language.
yeah.
And a lot of this series is sort of
How many Uranus jokes do you do?
none yet. Well, if I were using that app we were talking about, before you started recording, that translated all naughty below the waist words to bottom,
Yes.
then there might be some more Uranus jokes, but I guess I'll have to work one in.
we can revisit that a little bit. There was an app that took a book, like an ebook, in it, and it would change curse words to things that are words that are currently less offensive to some people, but it also took sexy talk, the old sex talk, and changed all the words to bottom. So if you had whatever derivative of penis or a vagina, it would turn that to bottom, which would completely change the text context of the book, to where you'd think that the writer was really into some sort of Uranus type metaphor. Yes. So
well, I'll have to incorporate that somehow.
yeah.
Five. Yes, 5.
Yeah. Be looking out the port window. Hey, Uranus is beautiful at this time of year.
Why, thanks.
Oh, hey. Are you happy to see me, or is that just Uranus sticking out?
That's no moon.
Yeah. Beautiful. Got it. Nailed it.
Yeah.
It's funny the way those things just kind of flow right out when you start jiving. Anyway. So what else you got going on? What else is happening? You just moved, which is big, especially from New England to someplace in the Midwest.
Yeah, it's culture shock, but I've been out here frequently, and my mom's actually from Ohio originally.
Yeah.
So it's not it's not as alien, say, as the planet that Nell has to dig on, but
it's damn close.
But yeah, we just came out. We were able to buy some land this year, and so we've been getting that ready for getting our tiny house out there at some point this year. So we have to make a spot for it between the trees.
Isn't Ohio where they have is it the viper mounds or the snake mounds or?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different mounds out here. And I mean, I'm a New England archaeologist, so while I know about Midwestern archaeology, it's, maybe just a few levels above the layperson. But yeah, there's a lot of really beautiful mounds out here. There's a fair number of sites. There's not as much state involvement with protecting those as you see in New England. And part of that is the history of New England goes back so much further as far as when white people came. So we have a little bit more investment, shall we say, in it in New England. But there's also a lot more federally recognized tribes in New England. And so there's a lot of people involved, which is great. It gives me a job too. So
right. That the mounds in Ohio, I've heard a lot about them. I've only seen pictures of them, but that's one of the things that's kind of on my list to go out and just, explore them a little bit, especially, like I said, I can't remember what it's called, that snake mound or whatever it is. If you take a drone up and you take a picture of it, it's a viper.
It's so cool. We'd have to use a drone to do that. It just, the amount of forethought and understanding your environment and what your environment looks like already, it's just mind blowing. I haven't been out to them yet, just because of time and stuff like that. But there's a lot of really cool geology out here as well. Aside from the river that catches fire, the lake that catches fire, there's some pretty cool rock formations and ledges and stuff that we were able to go to. So I definitely have a whole list of places to explore.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I moved from South Dakota to Wisconsin. And I can tell you, in South Dakota where I lived, you could see everything.
Yeah.
It's flat. It is flat.
Trees.
No trees. You could see for miles, and there wasn't a whole lot to go see unless you wanted to go out to the Badlands, or if you wanted to go out to the, the Black Hills or something like that. I mean, there's some things, but for the most part, not a lot.
Yeah.
And coming out to Wisconsin, and there's quite a few more. I mean, there's lots of mounds, and there's lots of, different types of rock, rock formations and different things to take a look at. I was astounded by the difference in the topography of this this particular state. And I was also just enamored by the trees. They had more than 3, which is, a big improvement. But, as time progresses and I more and more Wisconsin, I'm like,
it's a tree. Cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the coolest thing I ever did was go up and kayak the sea caves up at the Apostle Islands, which is something that I want to go back and do again. Which was, I mean, it was just totally,
it sounds amazing.
Blew my mind.
Yeah.
But besides that, I mean, Ohio's one of those places where I want to go out and just like, okay, I need like a week, maybe longer, and just go, and play a little bit, but I haven't gotten a chance to do that yet.
I've been kind of amazed at the different, just from south to north, and part of it's because I'm used to like tiny states that you can cross like 3 of them in a single day.
Yeah.
But the different topography that is still within the bounds of Ohio, like, right now where we're staying right now is a little closer to West Virginia, and so there's like lots of hills, but up where our property is, it's flat, completely flat. Okay. And it's not very far away, so it's just really interesting to me how varied it is, because like, I mean, I'm from New Hampshire, and it was just a bunch of mountains and hard-headed people, and that like and trees, lots of trees.
Yep.
So, it's sort of neat to see how much is encompassed in one state.
it really, I, I think Wisconsin is pretty neat as you go across it. So if you come up from Illinois and then go up to Minnesota, I think you don't see a real drastic change in the topography until you get into Minnesota, probably about 10 miles away from the Mississippi River.
Mhm.
And then it starts to, it's a little hilly, and then it just kind of flattens out. And that's where you have problems
Yeah.
with wind and snow and everything else. But, the one place up by La Crosse that's really interesting is there's like a flat valley. And what happened was it was a place where the glaciers didn't form
Oh,
for some reason.
yeah.
And so you see all these hills and these rocks, that are huge and shouldn't be there,
Hmm.
kind of pushed up, and then you drop down and there's just this, clear valley. And
That's where it stopped. Yeah.
you can tell everything stopped right here. And for some reason it didn't hit this little spot. And it's almost like when you go down in there, it's almost like it's a different world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really funny, but
That's really cool.
it really is. But like I said, you get to the point to where it's like nothing's scraped, everything else. And you can see, I mean, these huge boulders that have no reason to be there, that are not, limestone or anything like that. I mean, it's just, there's some sort of composite granite or something like that.
Yeah.
They're just here, and that's where they stopped. And it's like, huh. And somebody had to explain it to me, because I was like, what happened here? Well, the glaciers.
I recently was working with someone on a dig site, and his specialty was geography and geology.
Mm-hmm.
And what's kind of neat about archaeology is, sort of like with writers, there are people from all different backgrounds.
Sure.
Because you can do archaeology with a geology background, with, like me, a biology background, a history background, an art history background. There's so many things you can do. So talking to coworkers, you're always going to learn something. And he had mentioned the geology thing, and I just started peppering him with questions like, I'm supposed to be telling him where to dig, and I'm like, okay, hold on, but first. And yeah, he was explaining some stuff. Like I have a pretty good grasp on it, just because I've had to for my background, but he was explaining all these different things to me, and it's like, can I just like sit here and take notes for the rest of the day and get paid for that instead? But,
You could probably do that once.
yeah.
One day.
If my boss wasn't there, because I was running the project, but the bigwig was there. If the bigwig would have been fine. Everything would have gone smoother anyways.
Come back tomorrow. He won't be here.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
If only.
Yeah. So you're a contract archaeologist.
Yes.
Okay. So how do people go about? I mean, they just kind of look you up and say, "Hey, I want you on this dig," or I mean, do you
essentially? Yeah. So we work for companies that are, like contracting companies, and they are subcontracted by either the state or private companies. So whenever you're doing road construction or a pipeline or anything like that, power lines is another really common one, or solar fields now, especially out east. They call us in to make sure that what their area of impact is, it's not going to actually impact anything cultural. And so then we get to go out there. So we're usually the first people out, past, the environmentalists are sometimes out with us.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've been on some cool projects.
Well, how many times do you go out there and just find nothing?
More often than not.
More often than not. Okay.
I have dug significantly more empty holes than I have dug.
So next question would be exactly the opposite of that. What is the coolest thing you ever found and it just shocked the hell out of you?
Well, so I mean, cool is relative. And
I'll give you that.
Been on some really important sites. I've been on some sites that you can't talk about. I've been on sites where, there are burials, so they're, very profound. But as far as like nerd level,
Nerd.
One of the coolest things I found was a stone knife, and this was up in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and it was about yay big, and I was able to excavate it using rubber gloves, so my hand proteins didn't get on it.
Right.
And we got to do analysis on the protein residue on the edge of it, and it came back positive for bear DNA.
Oh.
So someone was skinning a bear, and it was about 13,000 years ago.
Very cool.
That was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
That was definitely one of them. And I've just been on a lot of really amazing sites, like again up in Maine, in New England, some really remote areas where those two rivers coming together, which is like a great camping spot even now, right?
Yeah.
And there was a whole gravel beach, and when I walked down on the gravel beach, I started like really looking, and it wasn't gravel, it was all stone tools and the flakes from making them.
Oh.
And that was like, whoa, holy crap. Like, a lot of people were here, or they were here for a very long time doing lots of things. So
yeah,
that's probably take the cake, but my specialties are in stone tools and in the like biological human anthropology part of things. So not, the shiny scimitar or the pyramids or anything quite as flashy.
Yeah, but the kind of stuff that you're going after is still very cool.
Yes, and also very important because it's often overlooked. So.
Especially a 13,000-year-old stone knife. I mean, how many of us watch Josh Gates go batshit over a rock that may have not been formed into something, and then it's like, this is going to lead to the gold. It's like, okay, Josh, calm down.
Yeah.
A little less coffee there, Josh. He is very entertaining. I love his show. I do like watching him just from the historical perspective of it, because he goes into the history of, this is what happened here or possibly happened or whatever. But on the other, the guy, I feel sorry for the guy because he never finds anything.
Yeah.
He never really does.
Mostly we don't. I mean, when you're doing contract work, like, of course, people are really concerned with budgets.
Right.
And so they're not going to send you out there if you can tell, like, oh, it's a swamp and it's been a swamp for a really long time. We only go out if there's like 200 acres of the project area. We might only go out and test 4 of those acres, because the rest of it either we know was destroyed, or we know, isn't someplace a person would go. Which there's some, different schools of thought as far as those criteria, but for the most part, I think we've got it okay.
That's cool. Going back to the sites that you can't talk about, there are aliens, weren't there?
No, of course not.
What? No aliens anywhere. Okay, got it. Wink,
this site, sure.
Yeah, that site showed. So when you're writing your books, do you take that archaeological process and really put it into the books, and so that they're maybe also learning about what you do in trade, or do you kind of put a little more hyperbole in there so it's more along the lines of Indiana Jones?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. Okay.
So especially in Travelers is the most grounded, shall we say, on Earth, because for most of the book, it is just a typical site. It's slow, it's sweaty, it's gross. You're not finding much. There's some cool things that most people think are really, really boring, like, tiny pieces of stone that look like cornflakes. But, then it starts to get a little weirder. But I did try, especially in that first book, setting up what Nell does and why she does it, and why why I do it, and why a lot of the archaeologists I know do what we do. I wanted to really include that part of the culture, because a lot of the thesis, if you will, of this series is who humans are and what it means to be human, and where we came from, all the different places we came from, how that impacts where we're going. And that's a huge part of archaeology too. So I did incorporate a lot of the theories and some of the more important sort of glossed over stuff. honestly, I was kind of nervous to put in too much of like the actual methodology, because like what if my coworkers read this and they're like, you don't know what you're doing. Fired. Because I did have to tone it down, because like it's as fun as Indiana Jones is, like my day job is pretty boring the vast majority of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I like being out in the woods, not talking to any other person for like an entire day, but that doesn't make for the most compelling story necessarily.
Yeah, there's not a lot of dialogue, just a lot of
right. I mean, up here, sure, but
oh yeah, right.
So yeah, I definitely included a lot of the methodology fine points, and I've gotten pretty good feedback that I struck a nice balance with, you know, not too much jargon, though there is a glossary at the back of the first book for people who aren't familiar with some stuff. But then when I went further in the series, I was really thinking about ways that I would like archaeology to progress with more high-tech stuff. One of the things, for example, is one of the site managers in Strangers uses a wheelchair, and it's almost impossible to use it. It is impossible to use a wheelchair on most archaeology sites.
Sure. And
I wanted to show that in this slightly more advanced society, that wasn't a thing anymore. Because I have a disability. I have a connective tissue disorder.
Okay.
And I use a cane some of the time. Most of the time I don't at work because I don't want to lose my job. And that's a reality that would probably happen if people saw me like not being able to do my job.
Right.
And so I wanted to explore that. So that was another thing. And also, like, you know, when you're watching like a football game, they have on the TV, they're putting the boundaries of the field on, and like the players can't see that, but
right.
the viewer can. So I wanted to do something like that where you can see the entire map of the site and the grid of the site overlaid on, you know, on the screen of your space helmet while you're digging. Because that would be like super spatially cool. I love maps. And I'm a super spatial person, but like there are plenty of times where I'm like, north is just the way I'm facing. It's like, no, it's not. It's over there. What are you doing? So I need to, you know, to have that resource. And so that was sort of where I was going to, was where archaeology could be if we continued in that direction.
That would be really cool if that was actually something you could, you know, having some, I mean, whether it just be a visor or something like that with here's the topological map of, you know, what's here or whatever. And I would have to think that, you know, with drone technology and all the advances just in the last 15 years of what they've done, and the, you know, the ground penetrating radar and all that kind of stuff. It wouldn't be out of line to think that in 10 years, there wouldn't be something like that. Really?
Well, I mean, already with drones have found, well, people using drones have found a ton of really cool sites just based on the difference in vegetation.
Sure.
Especially in Central America and South America, I believe. There have been like temples that no one ever knew existed. And, well, no modern people knew existed.
Well, yeah, they're all overgrown, and all of a sudden they're looking at it's like, hey, wait a minute, this spot's different, and they go there, and it's like, oh, look, it's another.
It's a giant thing.
Yeah, and they're you know, based on what they've seen so far, there should be another one 5 miles this way, and you know, be damned, there it is, you know, all overgrown and everything, and it's amazing what they're finding down there.
Yeah,
it really
well,
is.
Also, I mean, there's applications for stuff like that with forensics, which is something I touch on in book 4. And it's, you know, if you have a grid, again, laid out, and you can put in like, okay, so I found like this bullet or this laser blast, you know, here, and then we found this thing over there, you can get a picture. And I mean, people do this, people do it by hand, people do it by computers now, but being able to stand there and see it like you do in the Super Genius and in the forensic shows or whatever.
Oh yeah.
You know, if you could really actually see it, I just think that'd be really neat. And, you know, for people who aren't super spatially inclined, I think it would be really helpful too.
Just think you get one of those fancy CSI Miami tables where they're like, okay, this goes over here and this goes over here, and here's the gallbladder right here. And yeah.
Well, and then you can just dramatically take those off instead of your sunglasses for
Right. And you have to do it with some style, some panache. There we go. Yeah, now we got this thing. Woohoo! Look at this. Yeah, and there's my Gotti, and there's a little oh, look, there's a trap right here, so take all the fun out of the Indiana Jones type things.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things, because like there's a lot of high-tech stuff, but the great thing about Nell is she makes lots of terrible choices which help move the plot along and move her mostly backwards.
Well, that makes for good story.
I did get one review where it's like, she jumped into bed with this woman really fast, and like that woman seemed really shady. It's like, sir, have you never made a bad choice? Like, not once. There was no person you talked up at a bar where like 40 minutes later you're thinking, oh shit, like I gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
like that's never happened to you. It's happened to a lot of us a lot of times.
No, I've never made a bad choice, and I'm an honest reviewer.
I know, like
I also think the cursing is excessive. Yeah.
Wasn't the same review, but it probably could have been.
Yeah. Yeah. I never curse in my personal life, goddammit. I see no reason why. I don't know. Sometimes I think that people write reviews like that for posterity so they can just pull it up on their Amazon account and say, look, I reviewed this, Maybe they go into confession. Maybe they're Catholics that go into confession and say, hey, look, Father, I've been really good. I totally trashed this person for not being a good, upstanding Christian like I am, but I did cheat on my spouse 6 times. But anyway.
But that's fine.
14 Hail Marys and I'm out of here. Let's go.
I do kind of like some of those reviews when it is like this book is too gay, or this book is too many swears. I've definitely gotten this book is too gay thing. And all I have to do is share that on like Twitter, and all of like my queer community, it's like, oh, I want it even more now. Thank you. That's great advertising.
When I first started this podcast, I interviewed an author, J.P. Jackson, and God, I hope it. Yeah, I'm sorry. And he was, he's gay, and he writes every leading character is gay, and he had this, and so I said, well, why do you do that? And I wasn't familiar with his work or anything, and he said that it has an awful lot to do with when he was growing up, it was completely taboo, to be gay. And, it would cause problems if somebody thought you were, and, right. All of this, different type of stigmas that are attached to it. And he said, the one thing that I needed in my life was that to be normal. And so he thought, wouldn't it be awesome if all of my heroes, or all of, every character in my book was gay, and just to show that, it's normal. It happens. I never really thought about it that way, but I mean, I really loved the way that he kind of brought that back to his childhood and growing up, and then actually coming out and then writing this book, which evidently popped out of his basement one day and told his partner, hey, I wrote a book. But, right now, what? I mean, it was hilarious. He's a hilarious guy. I hope to get him back on when he gets another book out. But I'd never thought about it that way.
Yeah. It's really powerful to see yourself in fiction. And I mean, especially now that there's an even greater push for different stories being told, which I think is great. A lot of times if I am talking to a marginalized author who writes marginalized characters, it's like, well, when did you first see yourself in fiction? Because sometimes, I'd say at least half the time, the answer is I haven't yet. And I distinctly remember one of the first times I saw someone who I could relate to on the cover of a book, and I was maybe 12, and it was this redheaded tomboy girl who was dressed as a boy. And I just saw it and I just was staring at the cover like, what? I didn't know that I could be in a book, like people like me could be in a book. And it's just so incredible. And a lot of times it's like, well, I haven't seen it, so I guess I should write it. And
you know, my problem, my problem is that I don't see it as a problem.
right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't, you know, I just kind of, whatever you want to do. I mean, that's cool. Found love. Great. You know,
Yeah.
you know,
If
what do
only
you
more
like as a
people were like
person?
that.
You know, or whatever. And it's same thing with the stories. I mean, whether it's, you know, whether it's got that context in it or not, it doesn't matter. Is it a good story?
Yeah.
You know, is the plot, was it well written? Was it this? Was it that? You know, and then I'm intrigued. But I think people that get bogged down in, you know, that type of stuff get bogged down in dogmatic thoughts that are really not I don't want to say progressive, but I think they're a hindrance into society, because you're not going to change anything by shunning anybody or, you know, writing a review, this book is too gay. You go fuck yourself, you know, get off your high horse and read it. Was it a good book?
No. Yes.
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed it, but
Mhm.
did it, you know, what did it make you feel like you were gay? Because maybe you are, you know, I mean,
Well, that's the thing. That's another thing about seeing yourself, or maybe not realizing that you're seeing yourself in fiction. Because when I was reading a lot of, I mean, I still do, but I was reading a lot of fan fiction
Yeah.
several years ago, and I love fan fiction. It's fantastic. And a lot of the stories I was gravitating towards were, you know, at first I'm like, oh, well, I just like this because it's fun. But then I was like starting to see a pattern. And I realized like, well, maybe there's something in those stories that is mirroring something in myself that I haven't necessarily explored yet, or haven't even found the vocabulary for it yet.
sure.
And that was sort of the beginning of my exploration of gender and what it means to maybe not be one gender or the other. Because it's like I am really drawn to these slightly more feminine, masculine characters, these male characters. And it's like, is it just because those are the characters in the shows that I watch? But I'd be looking for similar stories in fandoms that I wasn't even a part of, like shows that I hadn't even watched yet.
Right.
And it was really, you know, it was really powerful to have that experience and realize like, oh, well, I have this little safe place to explore this and explore these thoughts. But I think, you know, people come from such a place of fear, and, you know, it's just, you can't let it go.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that I think fear-based thought is probably one of the major controlling issues for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, look at the stigma that people have about talking about sex.
Right. I mean, there's a whole app.
Yeah. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
I mean, just talking about sex. Oh my God. You know, I have to laugh because I kind of grew up in the corporate world.
Mhm.
And, you know, when I first started, it was, you know, you go out to lunch and you have a couple beers, you know, have a martini. What the heck? You know, I mean, that was, everybody had one. And nowadays it's like, oh, you are ordering a beer at lunch. It's like, yeah, why wouldn't I? Oh my God, do you have a problem? Can you not go an entire day without drinking? No, the last time that happened, I had this one comment. This guy was sitting there and belaboring the point.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know, I usually don't drink, but being on a lunch meeting with you has forced me to.
You're driving me to do it.
You know, so I figured the only way to finish this lunch without, you know, totally losing my shit is having a drink. I may have 6 and you may have to drive. I don't know yet. We'll see where you go. And he didn't like that all that much, but you know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, again, people have, you know, totally valid reasons for maybe having concerns over certain things. But, you know, when you start, you know, taking your eyes off your own paper, so to speak, it can get hairy. That's one of the things, like we were talking about, coming from all walks of life. And I will walk down a transect of test pits in, on a site, and I will pass a team of people who are, debating these different theories or different methodologies, and why so-and-so's theory about what happened at this site was really controversial and why they agree with it or don't agree with it. And then literally the next team down, they will be sharing all the times they shit their pants. And it's just, and then you'll walk back down and the conversations will have reversed. It's such a great variety. I mean, again, like some people that's not the case, but the vast majority of times it is. And it's like, when you're out there alone in the field and you're just you and your buddy, you get really close. And then also you're studying people. You're literally digging through centuries old trash, right, that someone left there or was forced to leave there, whatever the situation is. And it's like you kind of run the gamut with the stuff that you're finding and that you're able to discuss.
Mm-hmm. The thing about archaeology that I love is that it seems to constantly change the way that we view history. So there's history that's written, and then there's history that's taught. Mm-hmm. And then there's archaeology that comes around and says, oh, we found this and it's 5,000 years older than you thought it was. And they're like, oh, shit.
Mostly they're like, no, it's not.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That whole carbon dating thing, that's way off because we want it to be today. Was it covered in water? Yeah. You see, that throws the whole damn thing off, or, I mean, yeah, whatever they want. I read on the internet. That's another thing I'm sure you hear, mm-hmm. There's this research paper by this guy who you've never heard of that has this new methodology for carbon dating.
He has a podcast.
Yeah, he has a podcast. Something like that. But yeah, I try and read as much as I can, mm-hmm. especially, like we were talking earlier, I love Josh Gates just because he has a different, there's lots of things that there's way too much history to study it all. But I like the way he succinctly goes into this happened here, and this is suspected to be the area where we're going to find this or whatever. And I love that type of stuff, or History Channel or whatever.
Well, and some of those questions too, like a lot of those people are totally out of left field, and a lot of it comes from some pretty strong biases, but it's really important to ask what might sound like silly questions, I think.
Right.
And it's an essential part of exploration and analysis, because maybe you're the first person to have actually voiced that question. Mm-hmm. And maybe it can lead to something really incredible that people hadn't really thought of yet. I mean, most of the time it's probably just BS, but it's important to know that you can ask those questions.
Unless of course you're the weird, or the guy with the weird hair that blames aliens for everything. Of course it's aliens. Why wouldn't it be aliens? How could they possibly have made a stone knife 13,000 years ago without the influence of aliens?
I had to put a disclaimer in the front of my book that said, I do not believe in ancient aliens. I'm fully behind the fact that all sorts of indigenous people had incredible technology that we haven't understood yet. Like, it's not about aliens. And I repeatedly denounce it. I'm like, just because there are aliens and archaeology in this book does not mean it's like just covering my butt.
I can't remember where I got this from, but it makes sense in my mind. Mm-hmm. But it's not always. The guy said it's not always the most intelligent civilization that survives. Mm-hmm. And let's say a refined civilization comes into play and takes that very advanced one out, and they don't understand the technology, and it has nothing to do with eating or sleeping or their basic needs. Mm-hmm. They'll throw it away, they'll destroy it, they'll do something else with it, whatever. And his point was that there has been mounds and mounds of technology that existed way back when that we will never know about. And all we can do is stare at the remains and go, how the hell did they do that? We can't even do that with a crane. You know,
No.
it's
well, that's the thing. The pyramids, like the pyramids in Egypt, like all of the incredible canal systems in Central and South America, like there is stuff that like now we can do it, but without the tools we have.
right.
Like,
so obviously it's aliens.
Obviously it's aliens.
Because that's the easiest way to get out of it.
We just watched an episode of, was it Today I Found Out? It's a fast-spoken British man with glasses and a beard. But he does little clips on YouTube.
Yeah.
About history. And he just did one on the theory that the outer blocks of the pyramids were poured. And the theory was denounced by all these people despite huge amounts of evidence. Like, I was convinced. And again, it was like, you're going to say that this person's wrong just because it might disprove the thesis of your dissertation from 20 years ago that 8 people have maybe read. Like, okay, all right.
There are a lot of people that I've heard on various podcasts and read articles that have questioned the pyramids, questioned, you know, just history in general, because they find things that don't quite fit the narrative.
Right.
And it seems like the scientific method that you'd think would exist where everybody like, well, let's take this and weigh it and everything else is way more political than anybody than I would ever have imagined. You know, if somebody writes a paper on something and it's, you know, or writes a book and it's a best-selling book, and somebody else 10 years later comes back and says, hey, this is what I think happened, totally disproving everything that you wrote in that book, you're going to fight tooth and nail to save your reputation, I guess.
I mean, unless if your dedication is to science itself. I mean, I wrote my undergrad thesis on migration times into the Americas, and I was using a lot of genetic evidence. And now there's like huge amounts of data that are coming out as the ice caps melt. And I'm just like, well, I wish I had this information back when I wrote that.
Right.
But I'm not saying it's wrong. But again, maybe I just don't have enough hubris, or I just put it all in my fiction instead. But, you know, it's one of those things. I think a lot of those people get too comfortable in their position as an academic or as an expert, and they feel like they lose that when they're confronted with new data, when really it's like you're doing the opposite of what you should be doing with science. I mean, science is going to progress. People progress multiple times. So.
What is it? I think it's skeptoid.com. I think, if you ever, you know,
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I read that every now and then because I want to get a chuckle out of somebody who's so stuck in the mud that, you know, anything new that comes up, well, this is why this can't possibly be it, you know, and then they list off, you know, in 1972, you know, and it's like, oh God, shut up, you know, well, let me tell you why that's not going to work, you know, or, you know, anything that's, you know, I mean, the thing that I think is really funny about that site is that they take the dreaming and the imagination out of everything. And it's purely facts, and they only take, you know, 70% of the facts, and anything else that doesn't fall within this box, they throw it out. And it's like, you know, I don't know that you can do that. I'm sure, you know, it sells subscriptions and everything else, because there's lots of people that just want to sit in their box, rock in the fetal position, say, I know everything. I know everything. I know everything. I'm so smart. I'm so smart. I'm so smart. And, you know, when you get something that like, well, gee, that's different, you know, they need some place to go that's going to discard that so they don't change their their opinion of themselves. Whereas the more open people that are willing to change and say, hey, you know what, maybe we're completely wrong, are the ones that get shunned, which, you know, I don't get, because, you know, I think it's the same thing in writing books too. I mean, there's people out there that play with, you know, things that are kind of taboo, and, you know, and if they can pull it off, great. And if they can't, you know, I think every site has somebody, you know, every writing group out there has somebody who is the rule keeper. Rule number 6 says that you may never start a sentence like this, you know, and pick whatever you want.
Right.
And then somebody else is like, well, I did that. It worked out fine. I'm a best-selling author. What are you? Doesn't matter. That isn't literary. That isn't something in literature that we accept.
Well, maybe I'm not writing literature.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm not writing it to your level. You know?
Yeah, no, that's totally true. And I think it's interesting too with a lot of those rules and the boundary pushing, like, because writing is such a creative thing, you know, it's one of those things that really allows us to explore ourselves and explore the corners of our brains, you know, like reading, but, you know, sort of on a different level.
Right.
Explore these parts of ourselves or our ideas or what we fear about the world, what we want to see in the world, whatever it is, on a very deep level. And I think sometimes when you get people, and I mean, again, I'm sure it's different for every author, but when you get people who really adhere to the rules in a way that's very limiting, I think a lot of times it's like, what are you scared of finding in there? Like, is it that you're scared of not knowing everything? Because knowing everything sounds far more scary to me, because, like, I know everything there is to know and I'm still, like,
alive.
I'm still sort of bungling my way through life, like trying to adult or whatever and failing. Like, that's not good. That's not a good sign. You know, I think it's very freeing to realize that you know pretty much nothing, because there's so much more you can explore and learn, whether it's writing or not.
I always liken that to, have you ever seen The Highlander?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The end where he's, you know, he is the one and he gets raised up. I know everything. I am everything. You know, he sits there and screams, and then Highlander 2, he's still the same dumbass.
Well, and also what I thought was interesting when they did that, like, I know everything, I am everything, then the prize that you win, other than this ultimate knowledge, is being mortal.
Right.
And it's like, if that there's such a dichotomy there between this all-powerful, all-knowing thing, but you're just mortal. Like,
now your time is limited.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a hell of a prize. Can I go back?
Yeah, right.
Kind of like this immortal thing.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah,
I want to dress like it's the 80s until, you know, 2058.
What's wrong with that?
Oh, nothing.
Okay. Just want to make sure I still have my Van Halen t-shirts and everything. So yeah, instead of bell bottoms, I wear bootcut jeans, you know. Bow. I think, you know, polyester leisure suits should come back at some point in time, because that'd be really fun.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've seen pictures.
When I worked in healthcare, I would always refer to my scrubs, because they're like a size too large. I would refer to them as my zoot suit. Because the pants are, I'm like, yeah, just wear a zoot suit to work, you know, to work at the nursing home. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I've worked in healthcare, but I'm an IT guy, you know, but I did work in a I actually consulted to a place where somebody had one of those fat suits, you know, the ones that you blow up with a compressor, and, you know, and they're walking around or whatever. And it was Halloween, you know, but they went into storage or into supply, and they got scrubs that were like 6 times too big for them, you know, and everything else. And they're walking around, and it was really funny because they did actually trip and fall.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get up because they're, you know,
plus they're not used to, like, your weight distribution. Everything's totally different.
And the funny thing is that all of the coworkers are walking around just pushing her down, you know. Oh, this is cool, you know, and they're rocking her, and no, help me up, in her arms.
Oh, it's funny though.
Yeah, it was really It was hilarious. I couldn't stop laughing.
The shenanigans at nursing homes in particular, because it's a little lower stakes most of the time.
Yeah.
Than hospitals. I worked the night shift, so there was a lot of
Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yep, that's for sure.
Well, I can't imagine nights in a nursing home are all that exciting. Maybe every now and then, but
they're way more exciting because all the people who have either been medicated or whatnot. They wake up, and I worked on the psych wings. So there's a lot of very colorful residents, and most of them were great and very sweet. But sometimes it was like, it was rough. There's a reason why I ended up switching to archaeology. Decided I preferred studying people when they were already dead.
It's either that or else being a mortician, one of the two. In archaeology, it seems less messy.
Yeah, I would totally go into mortuary science, but it's not as it hasn't progressed as far as I'd like it to.
Yeah,
I'm a throw me in a hole and let me rot person. So
let me alone, let me dig, be out in the middle of nowhere, which actually sounds really cool. But
there's some really, like, I mean, I've seen moose incredibly close. I've startled a few bears.
Yeah.
Definitely some cool stuff. Also some super sketchy landowners that walk up behind you with a giant gun. The first thing out of their mouth is lonely work out here, huh? And you're like, oh, this is where I die, right
this is awesome.
Cool. Yeah. This hole is now my grave. Cool.
Yeah. So that's your first thought. My first thought is, I saw Deliverance, not going to do that run.
Yeah.
Squeal like a piggy. No. Not going to do that. Sorry.
Yeah, no kidding.
Take down those fancy panties, boy. Nope.
Most of the really rural areas too. It's like, I don't know where you came from. It took 45 minutes to even drive here. There's no phone signal.
Yeah. There are those people out there that just kind of make you go, huh? Yep. I made a mistake, sir. Sorry, I gotta go.
Anywhere else.
Yep. There's bears up that way. I don't care. I'll be fine. I know what their intention is. It's to eat me. I'm not sure what yours is. But.
and that might be on the list, but there's other things too.
See, you just don't know. It's better to know.
Yep.
You know, if a bear's chasing you, that you're lunch. Mm-hmm. The redneck with the big gun behind you, you have no idea what you're going to end up. Yep. And I've seen way too many movies to really risk that. So
that was actually one of the sort of things I explored with the second NEL book was she's hiking on a power line corridor. She's running from the law. And I've spent a lot of time on power line corridors, and there's
how much time running from the law? No. Again, one of those things we can't talk about. It was the aliens. Anyway, go ahead.
The aliens, yeah. I won't tell you which state, right? But yeah, she's running from the law on these power line corridors, and at first blush, a lot of times it's like, oh, they're super remote. There's nothing out there, and sure, a lot of times there is, but the people who are out there, it's not maybe the people that you want to encounter. And that was kind of fun. It's like, well, do you take your chances with the coyotes? Do you take your chances with the spoiled meat because you're hungry and you haven't eaten in a week, or do you take your chances hitchhiking? So
yeah, there's no good choice there.
No, there's no good choice.
No good choice.
Okay, she chooses all of them. That's great.
Oh well.
Turns out fine.
It works out fine. Yeah.
She only loses a few toes. It's all right.
Again, the bad choices.
Yeah.
The bad choices. We're running up on an hour, which has been incredible. It seems like 5 minutes, but so V, what do you have to say to your readers? What do you got coming up? What you got going on besides the book in May 8th?
Well, so Heretics is May 8th. There will be advanced reader copies available. So if you want one of those, and also the Disciples, the short story prequel, you can get that for free by signing up on my website, which is bsholmes.com. Okay. So there's that, which is super exciting. And I've got a couple projects coming up. They don't have published dates or anything yet, but one of them is sort of revisiting my fantasy world, which we didn't really touch on, but it's dark, psychological, epic fantasy.
Oh, why didn't
I'll be
we?
revisiting
Okay.
that.
Oh, shoot. That's like my mother-in-law. Holy cow. Okay. All right.
we can talk again, right?
We absolutely can. What are you doing tomorrow?
Good question. I have a job interview. Wish me luck, please.
Oh, absolutely. Best of luck, ma'am.
But yeah, so I'll be revisiting that world, but sort of taking it in a more industrial direction, like flintlock fantasy, renegades, steam engines, things like that.
Sure.
So that'll be hopefully 2022. I'll be doing that, and I've also been working on a weird necromancer standalone, totally different, kind of a weird, kinky conversation about death and redemption and things like that. I don't know.
I like me some necromancers.
Yeah, so that's coming up, and whenever I decide to finish it, it's my pet project, so I pop in when
I think it's really interesting that in a lot of lit or a lot of books you see necromancy as being something that is for the most part, the stuff I've read kind of aligned with evil.
Yeah, I don't go there.
And I was talking to another writer, and I said, necromancy is actually in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And no, it is. And I said, yeah, go look up the Witch of Endor. That's a necromancer. No, I said, oh yeah. Look what Saul did.
Yeah.
Oh boy, it's right there in the Bible. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think, I'm fascinated by death, probably because I do work a lot with death, both in the nursing home and then in archaeology.
Right.
I find death incredibly beautiful and incredibly moving and bizarre, and that's sort of what I wanted to explore with this book. My father passed away a year ago, and I was there for the last 6 weeks, and very, very closely taking care of him, and watching that, and also growing up with a very open view of death.
Mm-hmm.
I think is something I'm really excited to kind of put into fiction in a way that I haven't before.
Sure.
So.
Well, it sounds totally cool. It just does. So we'll see what happens.
I hope it turns out cool. It's cool up here. We'll see what.
I am positive it's going to be cool. Positive. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It's been a lot of fun. We are going to have to do this again and talk all about your epic fantasy or whatever. Just get a hold of me when you're ready.
Yeah.
And when you can tolerate me for another hour or so. But with that, I'm going to say, show is done. I appreciate all of your time you give me. This is Jeff with the DIY Writer Podcast, wishing you all a great day. Keep your chin up. And you know what? Things are just looking up. 2021 is going to be better.
Yes.
Absolutely. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Please hit the subscribe button. I get a bonus for every subscriber, and I only need 1,506 more to become a full-time paid employee. Help me, please.